Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 30 of Superannuated Starman. And normally I'm joined by Chris and Cory and occasionally a special guest. But today I'm joined by not one, but two special guests. So let me introduce Kyle. It's been a long time since we've heard from you. How have you been?
I've been very well. Thank you very much.
I can't remember the last episode that we had you on. It might have been Doom, but it's been too long.
Street Fighter 2. Yep.
Where have you been? What have you been doing that's better than this?
Same.
That's fair. And then we also have another guest. He was on our Pokemon Yellow side quest that we did, Jonathan Rivera. John, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Glad to be able to do my first full episode.
And I'm so glad that we could get you on. And this is going to be a really hard episode to kind of control. So hopefully we can break this into some separate chunks. But I can't forget Chris and Cory. Chris, how are you?
Not too bad. How about you, man?
I've been pretty good. Today's
been busy, haven't you?
Really, really busy. Oh, my God, yeah. My life has just gone from 0 to 100 lately. And Cory.
Hello. Good to see you.
Yeah, man. It's been too long. It feels like it's been forever since our last show. But it's only been like 3 weeks, if that.
It's three weeks, a month, somewhere in there.
Yeah, it feels like it's been forever. But it took quite a while for me to get through this game. To make sure that we all get a chance to speak, we're going to break this down, like I said. But what are we covering? Well, we're covering the tactical espionage action game simply known as Metal Gear Solid. With introductions out of the way, let's take our first break of many to listen to some music from this amazing game. The year is 1998, and on September 3rd in Japan and the 20th of October in North America, Metal Gear Solid was released by Konami for the PlayStation 1. This blockbuster hit, along with its predecessors, Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, are considered to have popularized the stealth action genre. Self-dubbed a tactical espionage action game, it separated itself from many of the other action games of its time by encouraging players to avoid firefights and rewarding players for sneaking around enemies using tactics such as distracting and even camouflaging yourself in the series' now iconic cardboard box. The series would go on to be known for its unique humor, long cutscenes, and diverse boss fights. Written, directed, and produced by Hideo Kojima, who would continue to be involved with almost all of the plethora of sequels, remakes, and spin-off titles, Metal Gear Solid has set the bar of what the video game medium could do as a storytelling device. With an epic score, memorable characters, and mostly great voice acting, the game told a story that would have not looked out of place in a summer blockbuster. Considered a cinematic masterpiece, Metal Gear Solid tells the story of a spy, codenamed Solid Snake, tasked with stopping a terrorist group called Foxhound, who have taken over a weapon facility housing a cutting-edge nuclear weapon called Metal Gear. The game released to critical acclaim and went on to be one of the highest-selling PlayStation 1 titles ever. IGN even ranked it as the best PlayStation game ever, and later it went on to be 19th on its top 100 games of all time. I also want to mention Yoji Shinkawa, who is the character artist and also made the striking and now iconic artwork that appears on a lot of the Metal Gear games cover art. Guys, I know that there's more out there, so please, if there's things you want to add, go for it. There's so much to this game and so much history that there's no way I could cover it all. So, Kyle, John, Cory, Chris, is there anything you guys want to add here?
You didn't mention Hideo.
He's a weird dude.
He's probably the most eccentric, weird guy ever. But he and his team for the last 30 years have produced some of the best video game content ever. He might be a weird. Did you rack it? Yeah, that was that the crossover for the fourth gun?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, they did the cutscene where they put in Snake. Was it Snake into? Oh no, they put Altair's robe on Snake or something during the trailer.
Mhm.
That was fun. But yeah, that whole obviously. So he's now working with directly with Sony, correct? Konami dumped him recently. He did Death Stranding recently, and he's producing something new, I'm sure. But
I think he's working on a sequel for it, actually.
yeah, okay, that makes sense. He's been hitting home runs. This is the first game I ever played. Well, played all the way through. I played the original Metal Gear on the NES. I was 6, so I had no idea what was going on.
Well, we'll talk about your own personal history in a second, but as far as history with the game itself, that's what we're kind of talking about right now. One thing I didn't mention, we talked about some of the voice actors, and one of the most prolific voice actors that wasn't really known or well known before this game, David Hayter. He is just amazing. But the last game that I can remember him being in is Bloodstained.
Never heard of it.
Oh, yeah, what is Bloodstained?
Bloodstained was one of the games that came out. It was a Castlevania-like.
Oh, okay.
If you remember the Igavanias after Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which is kind of mentioned, and then we'll talk about later on in this podcast, Igarashi, he went on to develop his own Castlevania games, which was Bloodstained. And David Hayter is one of the... Is it Hayter or Hayter?
Hayter with a D.
With a D. I was saying T and N's.
It's
Hayter.
Hayter is Hater.
Oh, with a D. Delta.
No,
the D.
it's
Yeah, David Hayter.
It's Hayter, Hater.
Are you kidding?
Yeah,
Am I
it's
wrong?
David Hayter.
I might be wrong.
Definitely a T.
All right. So, the David. He
David.
he is the voice actor for one of the... He's kind of a protagonist, even though he's a boss at some points in Bloodstained. I think it's a great game. You should definitely check it out if you haven't heard of it. So is there anything else?
Yakuza after that too for a short piece.
I wouldn't be surprised. He's so talented and his voice is so iconic. But whenever I hear him in anything else, I think back to Metal Gear.
Yeah, I mean, that's really like that's his flagship character. But like I know he's done like anime dubs too, and I think he's actually done like actual like live like action like in television series and stuff too.
I'm fairly certain he wrote X-Men 1 and X-Men 2 as well, the films. The Bryan Singer movies.
You know what? I think you're correct.
He actually
What?
appeared in the first one.
That's insane. All right, so let's...
He's a very talented man.
We're starting to get further and further away from Metal Gear, so let's take one more break, and when we come back, we're going to hear from Kyle and his memories of Metal Gear Solid. Kyle, was this the first game that you had for your PlayStation, or was this one of the titles you maybe got later on? What are your memories of Metal Gear Solid?
Definitely wasn't the first game. I do not know what the first game was, but my memories of PlayStation 1 can be boiled down to probably 5 games at this point in time.
I think we had Final Fantasy Tactics when we first
Oh, that's true, yeah. Final Fantasy Tactics, we got not Urguys. Well, we had Urguys.
Yeah, we had Urguys.
What's Strange from Saga? We talked about that one in a previous podcast.
Yeah, we had that, Tactics, and then we had Final Fantasy VII for sure.
Yeah, but the whole idea, this was released, would you say, 98 in the United States?
Yes.
Okay, so I think this was a big cover story on PlayStation Magazine for the preview, and then, of course, the review came several months later. And I was always really excited. It had gorgeous art and everything, and PlayStation Magazine gave it a review. They gave it the full-page review, the whole spread review, both pages, I think. And they gave it like 10 out of 10 or something. It's like it's going to be it's incredible. It's doing something totally different. There's cutscenes, in-game cutscenes that aren't complete garbage, a la Resident Evil. There's actually voice acting in the game that isn't garbage, a la Resident Evil. There's a whole lot of story. We're going to be talking about this probably for years to come. So I was really hyped to get it, and we couldn't find it anywhere for a long time. Blockbuster
Was that because
Video.
it was sold out?
Yeah, most likely. But Blockbuster Video, I remember, it was there at Blockbuster, but it was never behind the jewel case. So every week we'd go there, and finally one week, after like 3 or 4 weeks of waiting, there's one copy, and I immediately, yep, this is what I want, let's go. And I remember playing through it and certainly going like, what am I doing? This is incredible. Like, this is the first time I can remember actually sitting down and like digesting dialogue or digesting a scene. And then the game basically just walks you through, press the action button to do this. Press select, it pops up. You'll see the codec thing pop up 3,000 times during the game to press select.
Oh my god, yeah.
And then, of course, the intro. After you finally get into the elevator, you get the whole splash screen, the title sequence. It's just incredible. The music is going... Brrr. And then I got to the end of the first disc. It makes you save the game.
Yeah, kids, back in the day.
You got to the end of the first disc in one rental?
Yeah, I played that game from probably 2 p.m. to until this happened. When I beat the first disc, please insert disc 2, absolutely pump that puppy in. Can't read it. PlayStation 1, I don't remember what the read error was, but it was... I think it just cut to, it either hard cut, it might just hard crashed, I don't remember. But I'm like, oh, okay, no big deal. Take it, reset the system, and then, please insert disc 1, okay. Okay, watch the cutscene again. Please reinsert disc 2. Same thing. So I tried this one more time, and then I finally had the foresight to take disc 2 out and look in the light down the disc, and it looks like someone took it to a sandblaster and just annihilated everything readable on the disc.
Oh.
So there's no way in hell this is ever going to work. So I'm like, well, that kind of ruined my day. Put it away, went downstairs and watched a movie or something. And it took, I think, I scoured every time we went to Best Buy or Funko Land or anything like that, I'm like, where's Metal Gear? Where's Metal Gear? Give me Metal Gear. It's nowhere to be found for months and months and months.
Like before the holidays. And
Would you hold on a second? I'm waiting. So basically, it's like 2 weeks before Christmas, and I mentioned this before. That was kind of a dad bonus thing where go pick something out that you want at Best Buy. And sure enough, there in the beautiful green stripe that said greatest hits in the 2-disc dual case was Metal Gear Solid. And wow. I grabbed that thing so fast, and I ran to my mom like, this is all I want. This is all I want. It's $20. This is all I want. And she's like, sure, whatever. And I got home. I remember putting disc 1 in, loading the save game. I made sure to keep that save game on the memory card forever. And I load up disc 1. Okay, insert disc 2. And I put disc 2 in, and I hear the fucking cutscene starts. And I'm like, I fist pumped into the air to myself and just went, yes! And then I immediately turned the game off and started a new game from scratch because I forgot everything that had occurred until that point.
And
That's impressive.
This was the entirety of Christmas break at this point.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I think
I was
did
gonna
it
ask.
like 4 or 5 times in a row because there's so
Wow.
much stuff to find and there's so much secrets and Easter eggs and stuff. And of course, you could play it on extreme. If you play a new game in one way, one ending, Snake gets the bandana, and now you have infinite ammunition, which totally changes how you play the game. If you beat it the other way, you get the Otacon stealth suit, which totally changes the way to play the game. So there's tons of replayability, and it's amazing.
Isn't there a third where is it a tuxedo, or am I thinking of a different Metal Gear
You're
game?
correct. I think the 4th playthrough or the 3rd playthrough, Snake is wearing a James Bond style tuxedo.
Yeah, if you beat it as with the Otacon ending and with the Meryl ending, Snake will be wearing a tuxedo, and the Cyborg Ninja will be wearing a red version of his suit. And if you have the integral version, Meryl will be wearing a Solid Snake stealth suit.
That's awesome. I did not know that.
John, I'm so glad you're here because you're definitely both of you are going to be massive assets to this. So I got a couple questions for you. Were you ever this is for Kyle, were you ever at some point like debating on deleting some other save files from your memory card? Because those things only held like 128K if I remember correctly.
So Cory will remember this. Somehow we got our hands on one of those Mad Cat memory cards that had like 30 memory cards on them.
But those things are so prone to corrupting.
Well, okay. What I did was I made sure that I saved Metal Gear in a single. That was the only save game in that thing, and I remember it was like A or like B16, B13, whatever it was. But fortunately, it worked. But I just had that saved in a specific block that I never touched. That was Metal Gear. It was that block. Don't ever touch anything else in that block ever again.
What a memory! That's so awesome. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Question. So from the time that you were trying to rent it to the time you finally bought it, it had already become a greatest hits. Which
yeah, right. It'd been like I think around a year at that point.
Wow.
Delayed gratification. It did sell, like it was literally sold out pretty much every time it was restocked. So
I mean, it's one of the most popular games on the PlayStation, which we already mentioned. It's not surprising that it could not be kept on the shelves.
Yeah, just as a little kid, I was probably, 12 at that point then? Yeah, probably 12 or 13. Maybe I understood that stuff was selling out, but it's like, why don't you just buy, like, all of them? But probably not understanding that they physically need to... Remember back in the day where you needed to print physical media and ship it across the country and then sell it piece by piece? And now you just have the internet, so...
I do have a question for you, and John, you can answer this too, or anybody. So... I may be skipping ahead here, but did anyone fall victim to the infamous Meryl codec if you rented the game?
Oh, so here's that's ruined for me because on the back of the Blockbuster video sleeve, there's always they put the instructions on there. You know what I mean? Because it's a rental, they don't give you the instruction manual. And at the bottom there was always tips and tricks / cheat codes. And the only one for Metal Gear was to call Meryl, dial this number. And that was it.
Oh, not me. The first time I got it, I also, and I'll get to this on my story, I rented it from Blockbuster, or somebody else rented it for me. And I got to that point. It says to call Meryl, look on the back of the disc. And if you remember, at this point in the plot line, Kenneth Baker gives you something called the optical disc.
Yes.
In your inventory. So I held the item button and pressed circle. I tapped it over and over again, and I went through everything I could do.
Hideo was screwing with us at that point.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know what they are talking about. How do I get this code? So eventually I just went through the codec and went 140.01, 140.
Oh, no.
Now, luckily, Meryl is 140.15.
Yeah, she's only 15
so it only
in.
took 15. But if she would have been 142.86, man, I'd have been there all day.
That is such a great story because that got so many kids. Because I can remember reading about that in gaming magazines when I didn't even own a PlayStation. I knew about the Meryl codec. That's how big of a deal it was. It permeated the entirety of video game society at that time.
Well, so I kind of just want to chime in here. Like, Kojima does this kind of little sneaky asshole stuff a lot, and another prime example in the game is the Psycho Mantis fight. And for Psycho Mantis, you have to actually unplug the controller and plug it into another port to do the fight.
Yes, and
I've got ways to do it, but that's okay.
I've got some stuff to talk about for my playthrough today as well on that, because it was, oh my god, it was painful. Cory, do you want to kind of piggyback off of Kyle's, or anything else you want to add about what your memories are?
So my memories are basically just watching Kyle play this over the course of like 2 weeks. It was a lot of fun. I've experienced the full game as like a person in the stands, basically.
It's a very cinematic game.
Yeah. I mean,
Very watchable.
This game has over 3 hours worth of cutscenes, and then if you add in all the codec conversations on top of that, there's like another 6 or 7 hours there. So there's a lot of dialogue in this game, and there's a lot of video, and it's just very heavily story driven to the point where the game itself is basically like a movie. So there was plenty to watch while like having Kyle play through this. That being said, I did end up playing it through myself at some point. Definitely not anywhere near like us buying it originally. And I got pretty good at the game just because of the like spin-off title, the VR missions, which I end up beating like all the game modes on that one too. So I have my time with Metal Gear, but most of it was just watching Kyle play through, especially as the other titles started coming out in the franchise.
Did any of you ever get the demo disc from Pizza Hut that included demos from Tomb Raider 3, Gran Turismo, Medieval, and of course Metal Gear Solid?
Nope. I do remember having a demo of Medieval, but I don't know if that was PC Gamer or not.
I had the demo from Metal Gear, but I don't think it was from Pizza Hut. I don't remember where I got it, but I sure do remember playing it because you only get to the DARPA chief, and I believe that's where it ends.
The Pizza Hut demo disc that included those games is very, very rare, very, very sought after, mostly by Metal Gear Solid fans. Like, you can catch it on eBay, and you're going to be paying quite a bit of money for a good, quality, clean copy of that game, or demo.
You talking like hundreds of bucks, or like $50?
The last time I looked, there was a listing, it was for like $80.
Okay, that's pretty solid for a demo disc from Pizza Hut. That's a nice thing to have.
Chris, is there anything you want to mention before we go ahead and take a break?
No. This was this game. I've mentioned before, I was kind of late to the game with getting a PlayStation, so I kind of missed out on this. Or I mean, I definitely missed out on it.
I would like to mention one thing, and it's the fact that David Hayter played the voice of King Shark in the Flash series on the CW. So that's another fun fact for you.
The guy's just doing everything. So let's take a break, and when we come back, we're going to hear from John and myself and our memories with this game. So, John, we heard about your little mishap with Meryl's codec. Unfortunately, you didn't have to wait too long before you got into it. But what are some of your other memories with this game? Was this one of your only titles for the PlayStation? What other games did you have? And what's kind of your general history with the PlayStation 1?
Oh, PlayStation 1's probably one of the ones I played the most. My first game was Crash Bandicoot, and actually, for some reason, my mother bought me the Casper game, based on that Casper movie with the three other
Yeah,
ghosts,
I know
Fatso,
exactly what that
Stinky.
is.
Yeah, it's not that great of a game. It's not horrible, But I remember she bought me that. But I played everything. I mean, if it's one of the classic PlayStation games, Tomb Raider, Spyro, anything, I've probably played it. And Metal Gear was one of my favorite. It's probably my favorite game on the PS1 for sure. But I mean, like I love that series.
Yeah,
Um,
same here.
yeah.
It's still in like the top 10 of all time for me.
Sure, yeah, 100%. I really wish they'd remake it in like full HD glory the way they're trying to do this new Metal Gear 3 remake.
Yeah.
But my experience, actually, the funny thing is my mother's boyfriend at the time, this guy she was dating, he had rented it, and we kind of almost bonded over this game. Like I would watch him play this game and I would play this game, and it was like amazing to me because like my standard of gaming up to this point was Crash Bandicoot, and the storytelling on that is like 10-second cartoony cutscenes. To see something that had deep, like well thought out plot lines and twists and turns and dramatic acting, and I was like mind blown.
Asking your mother's boyfriend, what's a strip search?
Exactly.
I don't know how deep a lot of this is because, as we'll talk about, there's a lot more like it's a lot thirstier of a game than I remember it being.
Oh sure.
Well,
All of
we
them
go
are.
back to Hideo Kojima, yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, it's Meryl just walks a specific way, and it's like, come on, dude, and no.
There's also
Yeah.
Easter eggs where you can see Meryl in her panties by either
Oh
going in and
God.
out of the vent, or if you catch her in the bathroom fast
Yes,
enough, she'll be in her panties.
I read about that as I was doing research. Why add that? There's no need for that.
Oh,
But
Japanese culture is a little more sexualized.
yeah, for sure. But I digress. John, keep going with your memories.
So yeah, one of the biggest things I remember, and these are two tragic stories. Okay, so the first thing is I got all the way to the Metal Gear boss fight, and then we had to return it. Okay. So
Oh.
No.
so the first time I got it, I played through that game to the boss fight, could not beat it, returned it, and I didn't end up finishing the game for months because we didn't have a lot of money. So I had to scrap together enough money to the game. Then we didn't have a car, so I had to find somebody who was willing to drive me out to Target and buy that game. It was the only game I'd ever bought myself was Metal Gear Solid, and I
Oh, that's
bought
pretty
the
cool
game.
though.
That is
And
really awesome.
I'm not waiting around for this shit. I'm getting my own copy.
100%. And so I bought the game and beat it. And I believe, and I could be wrong at this because my memory could be skewed. I don't think I had a memory card at that time, or I didn't save it the first time. So when I bought it, I had to restart from the beginning and play back up to Metal Gear and beat it.
That's insane.
I have a very tragic story about Final Fantasy VII that is almost identical to that, where I did have a memory card, and this was my uncle's PlayStation actually. And I know we're not talking about Metal Gear, or Final Fantasy, but I got all the way to the third disc, and we had an electric storm, and there was a surge, and it fried only the memory card. Everything else is fine.
Wow.
But then I had to go on through this wasteland of life, being unable to save any of my games and having lost saves on everything else. So it was pretty brutal. Go ahead and finish yours, but then that's where I'm going to start my memories off.
Sure. I mean, piggybacking off that, the second tragic story I'm going to talk about is the fact that, I had never played a multi-disc game before, and this game had 2 discs. And I had never played Final Fantasy VII until after this, so I had never switched disc before. So when I played Metal Gear the first time, it does not, as somebody said, prompt you to save before switching disc. It doesn't. You can have saved it beforehand, but it does not tell you that. So when the game popped up with boom, Metal Gear Solid 2, insert disc 2, I had never switched discs. So my instinct is I'm not going to open it while the game's running. Without thinking, I just turned it off.
Oh no!
And the moment I did it, I was like, oh no. I'm like,
Oh
how am I going to load
no!
it? and I had no memory card, so I got all the way to disc 2, which is like 80% of the game, and then I had to go back and replay it again, and then say, "All right, leave it on, click the open disc button, and pull out the CD from this tray and put it in," because I was destroyed when that happened.
That is brutal. That is 25 years later, and I'm hurting for you right
There's a
now.
lot of good stories with all your guys' memories.
Yeah, but I mean, other than that, it's just like loving the game. I'm obsessed with it. I've pretty much played. I'd say I'd play all but 2 Metal Gears, including like we're talking like if you talk every single spinoff, I've probably only not played the Ghost Babel Game Boy game, and
Oh, okay.
I don't even know what and that horrible one that I don't even count Metal Gear Survive. But besides that,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah, for sure. Okay.
I played the Acids. I played, I've done every VR mission. I love those games.
So my history is really weird. Like we were talking about with that memory card, it wasn't my PlayStation, it was my uncle's, and he had rented Metal Gear Solid, so I had played it a little bit, but that was one of the games that was completely wiped out when that memory card got fried. So I didn't really experience or play much of this game until I was an adult, and it wasn't until one of my tours in Iraq that I was playing it on my PSP. And we talked about this before. I want to give a disclaimer. I don't condone piracy, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't engage in it when I was younger. But I've since purchased this game and just about every other game I've ever pirated several times over. So I feel like my conscience is clear.
Heck, I've purchased this game probably a dozen times.
Yeah, I bought it again, I think, just now to play it again.
Yeah, when they really re-release it, you can bet I'm going to get it on the PS5 as well.
Moving on, I had custom firmware on my PSP, and before the PlayStation Network store had PS1 games for sale on it, you could actually rip your PS1 games and then convert them and play them on your PSP. But one major problem was that multi-disc games were a little more complicated because obviously you can't, just lift the lid on an ISO and throw in a second disc. That wasn't possible on the PSP. But modders and hackers came through and eventually figured out how to make it happen. So my first experience playing Metal Gear Solid was on the PSP's 4.3-inch screen. Not exactly ideal. Say what?
So that's pretty rough.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Snake is probably about a 1/4 inch tall, and you're trying to figure out what's going on.
It was difficult, to say the least. But I had gotten my hands on some other PSP titles that came out at that time, like Acid, but I wasn't a huge fan of that particular game, so I never beat it on the PSP, but I did purchase Metal Gear Solid The Twin Snakes for the GameCube a few years later. I got it used at GameStop, and I really enjoy that game. I'll admit it, I didn't beat it on GameCube either because I was too busy playing the Zelda games, that's really my franchise compared to some of you guys that are like,
I mean,
Mega
GameCube, that's Wind Waker, so you really, that's fair.
oh, that's such a good game. And I really want to talk about that at some point because I love Wind Waker. But we're talking about Metal Gear. So I had a hard time sticking with the games in this franchise. And even though the GameCube release had a lot of quality of life improvements that were, especially some that were in the second game, Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, it just didn't stick with me as hard as it probably did for you guys because I was older. I had a lot of other games that I could play at this time. And we'll probably talk about it, but have you guys ever played the Twin Snakes before?
Oh yeah,
I have not, no.
So while it does have improved graphics and all that, it's got a lot of. That
Snake backflips off a rocket, and that's goofy.
Yes,
And did
it's
they
a lot more
recast
cartoonish.
voices and?
they recast 2 voices. Myling
Yeah,
and
not
Cyber
everybody.
Panda.
Okay.
Yep.
Why they only did the 2?
I couldn't pay him enough, or they were dead. One of the 2.
Yeah, I mean, for some reason they only recast those 2 voices. I think
Well,
that if
but
they
did
had
they-
tried recasting David Hayter, like
Did
that
they
would've
use the
been
original
awesome.
audio, or did they just get the guy to do it again?
And they re-recorded it.
Oh wow, okay.
Visually, it's a massive improvement over the PlayStation 1 title, but they made some of those cutscenes so corny and so hokey. I mean,
sure.
Snake is he's this legendary soldier, but he's not Goku. I don't want to see him doing outrageous stuff.
Yeah. And on top of that, there's a couple like really goofy break the fourth wall moments, like when Psycho Mantis is doing all his silly things, making your controller shake and reading your memory card. He kind of glances at the screen and looks at the player like, "Is this guy for real?" Like that kind of like fourth wall break stuff.
Oh, that kind of Looney Tunes kind of
Yes,
stuff.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. But the Twin Snakes is actually a pretty sought after title. I don't think it received a huge print run. So it's kind of difficult to get your hands on today. I'm really glad that I bought it years ago because it's something I want in my collection, but it just wasn't for me. But guys, that's the end of my memories. Like I said, I didn't have a ton. I I had played it with my uncle, played it on the PSP, and then I played it on the GameCube, and I never beat it as a child. Does anybody else have anything you want to add before we move on to replaying this game today?
Can't think of anything specific. I've got tons of Metal Gear stuff juggling around my head, and I have to keep it all organized.
Well, if you feel the need to just get some stuff out there, go ahead and say it, man, because it'll spin off conversations that we can keep going.
Oh, sure. Yeah. We'll eventually have to get to reading the memory card because that's always an entertaining thing.
Oh yeah, I've got a chunk to talk about there.
Sure.
What about you guys, Kyle, Chris, Cory?
No, I'm good. No.
The only other thing that sticks out is just how many like weird Easter eggs are in this game.
Sure.
Yeah, I guess basically this. I think unlike John, I've only played the first the numbered titles, so 1 through 5. But this spawned my love of this franchise. It might be my favorite game franchise of all time.
I hear that from a lot of people, and it's not surprising at all. It's an amazing game. So let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll discuss replaying Metal Gear Solid in 2023. All right, welcome back, everybody. We just had an amazing discussion, and we're going to try to recapture everything we were talking about. So going back and playing this game, I think most of us replayed it on PC today through Good Old Games. That's where I played it, and I think everybody else did. And John was talking about it. It's the integral version, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And you were saying that it's the first disc, or go ahead and explain what you were talking about before.
Oh, sure. No, that I said that on the GOG.com website. It's pretty much, unless you have a original PlayStation 1 or the PlayStation Classic or you emulate, I believe it's the only way you can get it. Well, I guess if you have like the PS3 version where you
if you had a PS3.
Yeah. But it's so when Metal Gear came out, they came out with a version called Integral. Well, they came out with two versions. One called VR Missions that came with a bunch of little fun side missions you could do. And then Integral was kind of like VR Missions Plus. They made a couple little gameplay tweaks. I believe they did some little censorship things here and there. And they that's what this version is. It's just essentially the first disc of Integral without the VR missions, and it's been like just gameplay tweaks to fit it on a PC.
And we were also mentioning, because it's a Japanese developer, that there was the reverse for the controls for a lot of it, and that's the cross or X and circle, which threw off a lot of people.
I know. I remember for years, whenever I played a Metal Gear game, I always remembered circle is that select button. Like if you're going through the menus, it's circle, which can really mess you up
When
for
you switch to
certain
different.
moments.
Like, your muscle memory always screws you up for sure.
Yes, when all of a sudden it's asked you to like continue,
And then you
hit
press X and cancel.
Not a good thing. But you know what's funny is I remember when Metal Gear Solid 4 came out, it was the first time they made that switch where X was now the select button. I was like, oh my god, they've officially become like Americanized. Because
Yeah.
Metal Gear 1, 2, and 3, circle was your pick button, you know?
I played this. I wanted it as authentic experience as possible, so I grabbed one of the PlayStation controllers out of the PlayStation Classic console, but I could not get it to work with the Good Old Games, front end and all that. So I had to use an Xbox 360 controller, which is fine. It's a good controller, but it's not what I wanted to use, and it was a massive pain trying to remember which
I literally
buttons
had
coordinated to which.
I had to take a piece of paper and do the same thing. I was also using the 360 controller, and I had to keep a little scrap piece of paper telling me what lined up with what, so I didn't have to keep going.
The keys are named differently, aren't they?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
A is
no
X, B is circle.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm with you. I had both, so I remember. Well, I haven't had both. I grew up with PlayStation, then moved to 360. So that entire, what do you call it? When I switched, that was hard to get used to for sure.
So I think the best way to do this is probably to take this kind of in chunks, this section by section, and then we can have discussions in between each part. So if you guys are okay with that, I'll just kind of read through my notes and just
so
kind
start with the intro basically and work our way through gameplay or something.
Basically.
Let me hop in one moment.
Yeah.
Did anybody actually go back and listen to the whole briefing? Because there's like almost like an hour of, I don't know if it's an hour, but
I don't think I've ever watched the whole thing, and because I'm like, oh yeah, this is like 15-minute chunks, and I just I skipped it.
The intro?
No, not the intro. If you go
briefing.
to the special menu, you actually see Snake with his like long hair after he's been picked up by the government.
He's been captured at gunpoint by the government. Like, come with us right now, and he's naked, sitting in like an interrogation cell.
So that's what he was talking about, getting strip searched and his guns taken
Exactly.
away. I thought that. So the intro to the game is long enough, but there's even more to it than that.
It's huge. I mean, it breaks down everything. What Snake was doing before, his relationship with Campbell, each one of the people. I mean, like it really breaks it down. Yeah,
that's really interesting, because that was actually one of my complaints I was going to talk about was, I knew nothing about Snake, and while, it's kind of awesome to have this mysterious person, I was like, I want to know a little bit more about him, because, we'll talk about it later on in the game, but like there's a point where he's talking to Meryl and he meets the dogs, and he's like, yeah, I used to mush sled dogs.
That's what he was up to before they captured him.
I was like, oh, I now know something about Solid Snake.
You didn't watch the 5-hour backlog.
Yeah, that was my fault. My bad.
You know what's funny? So I was replaying with my son, and we're watching it, and we both came to the conclusion, like, man, Snake would be the worst person to hang out with, because almost everything you say to him, he comes up with this, like sarcastic, cynical remark. It's like, hey, Snake, what's your real name? A name doesn't mean anything on the battlefield. How old are you? Old enough to know what death looks like. It's like, oh, come on, Snake. Can we have a regular conversation?
What do you want for dinner?
He is like a moody teenager at some points, but he is a hardened killer that was, literally raised.
Chris, what do you want for dinner? Food is a luxury. You can't decide what you're going to eat on the battlefield.
Exactly.
My first thoughts was like, I forgot how cinematic this game was, and it really could be, the intro to any spy film that came out during that time frame. And the level of detail for the PlayStation 1 is just amazing. In that first area, you have like mice running around.
Can we just see that Snake infiltrates Shadow Moses, the nuclear disarmament facility, through submarine? They launch him into a torpedo, and he has to like swim his way to underneath like a glacier in Alaska to get there. It's awesome.
As a submarine within a submarine.
Yeah.
Yeah, essentially. And like I was talking about, like when you actually get to that first area, that kind of cavern, you see mice running around, and there's a couple different sections. One, namely in front of the elevator, where there's a puddle, and it's simulating a reflection of the light above it. And 1998 me probably would not have cared or even thought about that again. But looking back with this modern perspective, I'm blown away that that's something that they did on the PlayStation 1.
You could zoom in on the maggots and you could see them crawling.
Yeah, they will wriggle around. Something that stood out to me this time, really, because I was wearing headphones, was I never quite appreciated like your footsteps. Funk, 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 splash, 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 chunk, chunk, chunk. They change, and then you're running through the snow. All the sound mixing with Snake running around. When he knocks on a piece of metal, it does a clangy sound. When he knocks on a piece of wood, it's a more clunky sound. It's incredible.
Well, here, Metal Gear Nerd Fact, during the Hind fight, because they use stereoscopic sound, you can tell where the Hind is based on the sound.
And the Colonel will give you that hint.
Well, no, it's funny. Yeah, that's true. Yes, but it's funny if you have a mono TV, like if you had an old school TV, the codec will call you and essentially shame you for not having a stereo TV.
Awesome.
Are you kidding me? That is amazing.
No, he's not kidding. You can look it up.
God, this game, Hideo is truly a genius. You know, it's just unfortunate that he's insane.
Yeah.
Cory, you were about to say something?
Well, I was going to just say, there are just so many weird Easter eggs in this game like that. Like I mentioned earlier, like there's just so many little like fun like tidbits and stuff, especially like with the whole like being able to sneak around in the box and everything and just throw people off. And there's even stuff like with Meryl in the box. Like, isn't there, Kyle, help me out here, there's a spot like where you can have the wolves.
Let's get to it
when
we get to it. Let's get to it when we get to it.
Yeah.
So the starting area is basically a quick tutorial on how to move around and how to use the, I'm probably going to mispronounce this, the Soliton radar. Is that how you say it?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, you got it, yeah.
To us by Mei-Ling, and we have some more codec messages with Colonel Ray Campbell, who we hear from a ton throughout the game. And after that intro cutscene, we arrive on Shadow Moses Island, and there's not much combat in this first area, and doesn't have to be if you choose to play that way. And I think that's a really smart and intentional design, especially with becoming a tactical espionage game where they're trying to train you as a player not to engage head on with the enemy.
Right. Snake has no weapons. He can only, if you can break their necks, but that causes them to fall down and make a sound, and they come to investigate. And once you're seen, they basically shoot you to death.
Yeah. And there's, I mean, I'm sure that like your initial playthroughs, like you probably replayed that section a ton, but now you guys just fly through that. Me going back again, I was like, I know I'm supposed to be stealthy, but I don't really know what to do. So I killed them. And like you said, I got discovered and it just went downhill from there. So I was like, okay, I got to kind of rethink how I play this game. And we will make our way through all these terrorists because they want to deploy nukes to, from a top secret weapon, which we already know is the Metal Gear Rex. And we have our hero, Solid Snake. And he mentions that he's already had a run-in with the Metal Gear project, and that's referring to the first two Metal Gear games on the NES. And before we go any further, have either of you played those games? John, I think you mentioned it.
Yeah, they were actually originally released on a computer system called the MSX.
Yes, yeah.
But then re-released on the NES. But I didn't play them until after Metal Gear Solid, and that's when they were re-released on the Metal Gear 3 Subsistence disc.
As an aside, quick, what's the original line for Snake? I am feeling sleepy, or I am sleep?
I fell asleep.
I fell asleep.
Yeah, okay, good. I remember that the most. I had no idea what I was doing back then.
Yeah,
so I didn't like that game.
It's one of those like NES quotes, like "all your base are belong to us," congratulations, those kind of things.
Yeah.
But on the game, so while attempting to rescue the DARPA chief, he has after you get to that point, he has a mysterious heart attack. And that's where we met Meryl, or we meet Meryl for the first time, who will play a major role in the game story. And like John was saying, there are some, if you want to call them Easter eggs, where you can go back over the vent where she's continuing to work out. And for some reason, she's half naked. There's just,
Well, you start to sweat during the workout, and maybe you just want to shed some clothing and get a little more comfortable.
I guess. If I
in
were being held,
Alaska, by the way.
if I were being held captive by terrorist organization, the last thing I'm doing is taking my pants off. But
that's the first negotiating tactic.
Yeah. So from the DARPA chief, after he has his heart attack, we retrieve his key card and we progress through the game, going further into the basement, and using the hint that he gave us about the walls being bricked up, we use them to blow up with C4 that we find, and then we find the next person, Kenneth Baker, who's the president of ArmsTech.
Well, he's kind of strung up in a horrible situation.
Yeah,
he's wired to explode.
He's booby-trapped with C4, and this is where we meet our first boss of the game, Revolver Ocelot. So let's talk about him.
Well, first of all, I
Colt
wanna
1887. A single action army.
I want to say you glazed over Johnny Sasaki, the guy that Meryl knocks out butt naked and leaves butt up in the floor, and becomes
he has a
regular character. Yes, Johnny Sasaki appears.
He's in Metal Gear Solid 4. Oh yeah, no, you're right. He is in all of them, isn't he?
Yeah. Well, in Metal Gear 3, technically it's his great grandfather, but yeah.
Father, yep.
And you just thought he was a piece of ass.
So, okay, well, what's the story behind him? Why is he a recurring character?
Well, it's more of a joke character, but in Metal Gear Solid 1, the idea is because Meryl knocks him out and takes his clothes in Alaska, he ends up getting a really bad stomach virus. And so he's also the guard that watches over you when you get imprisoned later on, spoiler alert, and he has really bad diarrhea. And so in every
he has to run off.
Yeah, he appears as some merc that gets recruited into all these horrible projects, always has diarrhea, and then he actually becomes
Shadow Moses.
Yeah, and then a main character in part 4, he becomes actually one of the main characters.
Does he have diarrhea?
He does have diarrhea.
He does, in fact, have diarrhea.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even know what to say. So, Revolver Ocelot. So, we're introduced to him, and he's this kind of gun-toting cowboy that has this really elaborate, speech, and the guy talks too much, in my opinion.
Called single action army.
He's
what does he say about the gun? He's in love with his gun.
Pretty much.
Is that the same hand? Well, I don't want to spoil it. We'll talk about it later. We eventually beat him, and it's a pretty easy boss fight. He's the very first boss that you encounter, and during this whole time, the president of ArmsTech, Kenneth Baker, is booby-trapped. He's literally strapped up to C4, so we had to run around in a square pattern shooting at him, and you can kind of shoot at a diagonal, but whenever I did, I was having some major problems with it.
So I wanted to can we talk about the strategy for every boss fight, because these are all unique and fun?
Go for it, and then I have a question for you guys that I should have asked about your childhood playthroughs, so go ahead.
So in the instruction manual, which I did not have until we bought it, you can hold down square to prepare your weapon. In this case, it's the SOCOM pistol. And then hold down the X button, and Snake will run while aiming. So you could chase Revolver around and shoot him from behind. And it makes the boss fight literally a million times easier.
Oh, my goodness. So many people I've known do not know that.
I didn't know it.
It doesn't tell you to do that. It's in the instruction manual.
Yeah. I downloaded the instruction manual, but okay.
Yeah,
all
so
right.
You can actually pretty much exploit him by running, shoot him, and then during his kind of interim animation where he's invincible, just hover around him so that he misses his shot, shoot him again, and you can just go boom, shot, move around, boom, shot, move around, and after about 8 shots he's done. You don't have to sit there and aim through the wires. You can just stay right on him.
Oh wow.
Man. It's the first fight, so I beat him, pretty easily, but apparently it could have been much, much easier if I'd known that you could move around. I thought it was kind of similar to like the Resident Evil tank controls a little bit, but apparently not. So that's on me for not reading well enough.
Most people miss that.
So after we beat him, we're introduced to yet another character simply known in the manual as Ninja, aka Frank Yeager, aka Gray Fox. We get some exposition from Baker, and a side note, this is what I saw in the Integral, and I have a question for you guys. If this was in the original PlayStation, but holy hell, the FMV of real footage of a missile firing?
Oh yeah, no, that was all in there. Yep, absolutely.
That was in the original PlayStation?
Correct.
They always integrate real actual historical footage into the game's cutscenes.
Yeah, the whole there's a massive theme about nuclear disarmament throughout the entire series. And this is the first kind of step into it. Like the SALT II treaty was just abandoned by the United States and now modern Russia. So the plot revolves around Foxhound stealing a nuclear device stealing a nuclear device to launch against either the United States or Russia with the demand that they give them Big Boss's body.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't really explain the why behind it. That's just kind of, I was just talking about what's going down, because even still, I didn't really know much about the storyline to this, and I did a lot of research for this game, but I don't have that. I don't want to call it fanaticism, but you guys are super fans where I just like the series.
Yeah. Well, at the time you don't, as you said, unless you played the first game and listened to and read the lore and did all that kind of stuff, you don't really know who Big Boss is. You know that Big Boss was the leader of Foxhound, like in the 1970s, and Snake kills him in single combat. But of course, this all becomes all intertwined and mutated, and we could talk about the lore of Metal Gear for literally hours, so I'm going to try to avoid that as much as I can.
Sure.
What year in game time does this all take place? Do you guys know?
Like 2001, 2002?
Yeah,
So
I believe it's 2003 or 2001.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So just a few years after the game, while it was released. Okay. All right.
And when they were talking about like the nanobots and stuff in the blood, I was like, okay, that is super 2000s. Like
2005. I just looked it up.
Cory, you're pretty silent back here.
I'm listening. I don't have anything to contribute at the moment. I'm just having a good time. I'm just listening.
All right. Well, I just want to make sure you're not getting left out here. So after we've defeated it, we've met Ninja. We have this exposition, and this is where we're told that we can get in contact with Meryl, but he's forgotten her Kodak. But it's on the back of the CD.
The CD case.
Yeah,
actually, you talk to Meryl after Kenneth Baker, not after the Cyborg Ninja. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I'm thinking the boss fight. Horrible.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought this was such an amazing way to tie the game into the real world, but like John mentioned, it can be very confusing because Baker immediately gives you something that's called a disc or something. The icon is, what is it? Optical disc?
I think it's called an optical disc. Yeah,
and it has the icon of like a floppy disk, so it could easily confuse players, and especially if you rented it like so many people did. Like, man. But not long after this, we do contact Meryl finally through the codec, and she opens the hangar door for us, but we need the infrared goggles first. Otherwise, we're going to trip on these lasers, and that will lock the door and flood the room with gas.
So you could use your cigarette.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think you get the thermal goggles if you play in a difficulty other than normal or easy, correct?
Wait, what did you say about the cigarette?
Hold on, I want to hear about that. But I played it on normal.
Okay, so did I this time. I don't believe you get the thermal goggles if you play on hard or extreme, however. So you're forced to smoke your cigarette in front of the infrared beam to see if it goes up or down.
You never know when they'll come in handy.
That's what he says.
Is that really?
Yeah. She's like, he's like, yeah, I managed to sneak in my smokes. She's like, how'd you do that? I'm like, in a prison purse? Like, come on. Like, what?
Well, he swallowed them.
Yeah, he swallowed them, and he's like, yeah, the shot that you gave me, like, neutralized my stomach acid. So he had a bunch of soggy cigarettes in his stomach.
They had the cellophane on them.
And she was like, what do you need cigarettes for? He's like, you'll never know when they come in handy.
Is that the only time you use them? Or you know what? If it comes up later, go ahead, speak up, please, because I didn't use my cigarettes once. Because
I
figured,
was curious. I'm like, okay, like what's he talking about with the cigarettes?
I figured it was going to be something like in most games where you can do that, but it's going to like reduce your health or something. So I was like,
Yeah.
it does reduce your health, of course.
Yeah, slowly. Yeah.
That's
So
good. That's the right
what's
message.
Once outside, we need to use our goggles yet again, if you have them, because there's claymore mines tossed all over the place. But one thing you can do is that you can crawl along the ground and pick them up.
Yep.
Which-
If you talk to Natasha, she tells you, Snake, there are claymore mines. You could go to the camouflage upon them. Just crawl over them.
And at first, I thought, I was like, no, I'm going to get killed doing it. But then I tried it, and I didn't even remember any of that you could pick them up. But we have Vulcan Raven, our second boss, who's piloting an M1 tank. This boss is very, very easy. All you have to do is toss a couple grenades in the turret, and we get another cutscene and move on to another area. And really, this is almost like the second act already of the game.
Yeah, you've escaped the basically the storage warehouse / hangar area. So now you're in the base proper. You're sneaking your way into the nuclear where they're dismantling the weapons and stuff.
So you're talking about some of the strategy for beating these bosses. So Vulcan Raven, I just kind of ran around and
You
tossed
nailed it.
grenades.
That's the
Yeah.
easy one. I think as a kid, I set claymore mines in front of the tank and ran around. By the way, Snake also does a front flip to dodge a depleted uranium round in this cutscene, which is pretty sweet. But yeah, learning just chuck grenades, and then you see the animation of the grenade. No matter, even if you throw it, you kind of miss. The grenade will kind of fall into the hatch, and you go, "Oh, okay, got it." And then he goes, "Ah!" He takes a ton of damage, and he gets mad at you.
Because there's two gunners, right? Do you have to take them both out? I'm trying to remember.
He's using
this.
He's using the coaxial of the tank as he moves, and then there's it's just the coaxial gun of the M1. So it's just as it turns, he shoots you, and you have to. Crawling is what you want to do, but if you just throw grenades, you beat it really quick.
But after beating him, we deal with a lot of poisonous gas, and being spotted by an enemy automatically triggers the gas, which means instant death. I struggled with this area because I was constantly getting spotted. I was just having a hard time with this. Was there anything that I was doing? I mean, you guys didn't watch me play, but what could I have done better to get through this game? This area, because I felt like no matter what I did, I was going to get spotted no matter what.
I know what your issue is. In that area, any floor that has metal grates over it are cause sound. So if you don't avoid them or crawl on them, they will hear you. So you just have to look at the floor and make sure you're only walking on normal surface, because any area with a metal grate is loud.
Ah, man.
And up until that point, sound didn't really matter that much.
Yep.
Besides a couple little areas, splashing water and things like that.
There's snow prints, or your footprints in the snow. Well, people will go, "What's going on here?"
No, yep.
And on top of that, in this area, your weapons are disabled.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you might shoot a nuclear bomb, dude.
I guess. But not too much further in the game, you get the rocket launcher, and you have to quickly learn how to use it because you have to destroy what looks to be like a server that's somehow on the other...
Ring a thing, yeah.
Yeah, this whole area makes absolutely no sense. So there's poisonous gas, the floor is electrified, and you have to shoot a rocket that you can control with your controller. And how I did it was that I shot it and I would let it go faster a little bit. Then I'd immediately push left and right really quick to get it like to stop basically midair.
So were you using first person view to steer?
There's first person.
Yeah, you can. It's a million times easier. Yep.
Oh, guys.
Because Snake has a camera system, so he can see it, and you get when you jump into first person while shooting a Nikita rocket, you see all the data of the Nikita rocket, even its fuel health. So
it has
then you can
fuel?
Yeah, it has fuel. It blows up by itself if it goes too far. Yeah.
I can just feel Sean's pain right now.
Guys, okay, so I was maybe we mentioned this off air. I don't know if I mentioned it for the podcast itself, but this playthrough took me 26 hours.
Right, and these are all the no, yeah, for sure. I think it took me like 20 plus hours to beat the first time. But you learn all these tricks just by playing over and over again. And you do experimenting because who cares? I beat the game. And you learn that, hey, you could press first person and you could watch the Nikita rocket. It allows for much finer aiming as well.
Yeah, Cory nailed it. I'm just dying over here. And we're barely through the game whatsoever.
Body.
They're not off the first disc yet.
Yeah, but we eventually destroy this server, which disables the electric floor and then allows us to move on. And we see another room where several guards have been killed, supposedly by Cyborg Ninja. And at what point did they start calling him Cyborg Ninja? Because, like I said in the manual, he's just called Ninja.
Well, yeah, I think Snake just says, that Cyborg Ninja? But I just want to talk about the hallway that you enter.
Yeah.
And it's all, and there's the horrifying, I can't remember the music of this. If you want to do it overlaid with my voice right now, that creepy sound that goes on. And you walk into a hallway full of corpses. They've been completely eviscerated. It's incredibly gory and violent. And you're like, what is going... It's like a horror scene.
I want to add something, a little Easter egg that I don't know a lot of you guys might know. Are you guys aware that there are ghosts in this game?
Yeah, I am, yeah.
Yeah, if you get the camera and you look around, there are certain points in the game. I think there's about 30 spots that if you take a photograph, there is a producer, some person on the that made the game's ghost, which will show on the image once you view it from within the menu, and you can actually exorcise the ghost from the photos. So there are about 30 of them, and the only reason I mention that is because at this point, when Cyborg Ninja kills the one soldier, he's actually still breathing and alive, and he's one of the ghosts. You can take a picture of his breathing body and see one of the ghosts.
Yeah, I saw one of them was still moving, and I tried to interact with them, but nothing ever happened, so I just kind of left it. But is that a nod to Fatal Frame?
I'm not sure. I don't know if that's where they got the idea, but I know you can do that, and in Metal Gear Solid 4, when you go back to the same place,
To Shadow
Moses, there are ghosts in that one as well. So Shadow Moses just seems to be haunted.
You know, I don't think it could have been, because Fatal Frame came out on the PlayStation 2, I think, for its first release, but yeah.
The Fatal Frame ripped this off.
That's I don't even know what to say, man. There's so much to this game, and I'm so glad you guys are here to talk about it, because we're just barely scratching the surface, because I'm trying to hit all these points so that we can get a lot of this game, because this is going to be a very long episode regardless. But we get through this hallway of horror, and eventually we're introduced to yet another character, and probably one of my personal favorites throughout the series, Hal Emmerich, or better known as Otacon.
It's like my Japanese animations.
So I didn't know this. I didn't realize that his nickname was a combination of Otaku Convention.
They mention it in the game.
He says it in the game,
They do? Okay. I must have missed that.
You got to read all
Like one of my Japanese animes.
And Dave and Hal, Snake's real name Dave, is a reference
Oh my
to
God!
2001,
The
Space Odyssey.
You're kidding. I just put that together just now.
Hideo Kojima's favorite movie is 2001 Space Odyssey, so he named them David and Hal.
That's awesome. I love all the humor and the personal little touches in this game.
Mm-hmm.
This is where we have a fight with Cyborg Ninja, but you can't shoot him at all, and it forces you to fight. How?
You shoot him a bunch of times, and then it doesn't work, and then you take out your fist because you're out of ammo, and you punch him.
There we go.
Hand to hand. It is the basis of all combat.
Yeah, because
only a fool trusts his life to a weapon.
And I was getting nowhere, so I was like, all right, what do I got to risk? And I went and tried to punch him, and I was like, oh, that's how I do this. And so there's like 5 phases to this guy, and they just get more and more complex as you whittle down his health bar to the point where he will eventually like release this kind of electric field around you, or around him rather. But he's not a very challenging fight overall. Once you just kind of see how the pattern works, you can
While
beat
you're
him.
wearing your thermal goggles, by the way.
Yes, yeah. And you use those a ton in the game. I can't even imagine playing this on hard or what.
So as a quick aside, I started playing it on hard, and I went, "Oh yeah, you don't get a radar, you don't get the thermal goggles," and I was like, "No, I don't want to play this right now," and I just put it on normal.
Have any of you guys beat it on hard?
I have. I mean, well,
I beat it on extreme as well.
The first time I beat it of these two playthroughs, I played it on hard, and I did beat it with a. I don't know if you guys care about the rating systems, but there's a centipede rating.
I do.
Yeah, the second time I beat it with the I beat it on normal.
Okay. I think
So
I
it wasn't
got
fast.
I always get Puma, I think. I got Puma again, I think, is my rating on this playthrough.
Yeah, I think that's like the 4th or 5th highest.
So we have another boss that we're about to meet. So I think that we need to take this point and just go ahead and have a quick music break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about linking up with Meryl and then moving on from there in the game. Welcome back, everyone. So this is the part where we're going to be linking up with Meryl, and we know that she's dressed in the guard's uniform, but we don't know which one she is. But the game does something pretty clever, and as a woman, she's the only guard that'll go into the women's restroom. And linking up, we get some dialogue, and then we continue.
Is that
with our
all?
mission. Say again?
Is that all she does, Sean? Or maybe Otacon says she has a cute butt.
Oh yeah. So yeah, the games, and we were talking about this a little bit ago. Like John, you mentioned the word cringe. That's how I feel about so much of this because it's just. I
Why?
mean, there's no reason to say that.
Well, here's the thing: you could look at the guards' butts.
So okay, I just saw that one of them went into the ladies' room as opposed to because you couldn't even go in there on your own. It was locked off. So I didn't know what to do at that point, and I knew that she was one of them. But do they actually have a different?
Meryl has a different animation.
She has a switch when she walks, like her butt moves up and down as she moves, like, and she kind of has like a little like
her hips wiggle.
Swag.
So they actually want you to look at butts.
Yes, you can go look at all the guards' butts, and once you find Meryl's butt, run up to her. She gets the brink, but she doesn't attack you. She goes, "Oh," and runs away.
I did not know that. I mean, that's just one of the things.
How much
about
do you
this game?
suppose the designers of that part were just giggling when they were putting that in the game?
I
We're looking at a lot of dudes' butts.
I hate to bring it to you, but this is by far the mildest. In the second one, there's an implication of Snake masturbating. There's actual videos of models. There's like all kinds of stuff in the other ones. This one is super mild with the perv stuff.
Well, let's just try to keep it super mild here. We have to continue our mission after we find her in the women's restroom, and that's going to the commander's room where we face off with Psycho Mantis. And I'm sure that we all have a lot to talk about, but I want to mention just a couple of these things, and we already hit on some of them, but if you're playing on the original PlayStation version, he will read your mind. And by that, I mean that he's looking for save files on your memory card. And some of the games that he's looking for are Suikoden, As Your Dreams, and Symphony of the Night, the Castlevania game. And he'll say things like, "Oh, you like Suikoden? You like Castlevania? I see you like Konami games." What a way to just make him all the more terrifying as a
Uncomfortable.
boss.
Goddamn stalker.
Yeah, and in the Japanese version, he's checking for some other save files like Police Knots and Snatcher, which those games didn't come out in the States.
Now, if you were 12 years old playing this and that guy, wouldn't that creep you out just a little bit?
So I had never played any of the other Konami games, so I did not get to experience that. But when you set your controller down and he goes, "Let me vibrate," like I could make your controller vibrate, and then it vibrates, you're like, "Oh my god, this is incredible."
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's actually funny. Like, he only mentions like 3 or 4 games by names. Like you said, I think it's like Castlevania, Your Dreams, and Suikoden. But also, if you have like certain groups of games, he'll talk about like, oh,
Like
you
RPGs.
like scary games, you like RPGs, you like action games. Yeah.
And on the GameCube port, when you're playing that, he's checking for games like Smash Brothers and some of the Zelda games.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll talk about those. But that's not the only thing he's doing, because he also goes a step further, and there's several dialogue trees here, and you guys can elaborate on this if you know more than I do, which I'm sure you do. But he will talk about the number of alerts you had, the number of deaths that you had, and the number of traps that you succumbed to.
He says like, "You're a methodical man" if you've gotten like fewer than a certain amount of alerts, or "You're brash and careless" if you've gotten several higher ones like that.
I was a clumsy oaf. Like, I was bad all the way around, because, like I said, it took me 26 hours to beat this game, and I was dying left and right. I was getting seen left and right.
If it says stealth is optional, you and I, we're going to go with the optional.
Oh, definitely, man. And some of the sections that we've already kind of passed, like, there are traps. There are sections of the floor that will just fall out beneath you, and I'm walking around like, okay, I see the guard moving on the radar, so I better stop here. Well, I'm dead. Yeah. Snake! Which, I love those. They're great, but I didn't want to hear it 1,000 times.
Oh yeah, eventually you just keep hearing gunshots because you press the button so fast.
Dun, dun, dun.
But that's not the only thing that Psycho Mantis does. So, Kyle and John, how about you guys? Kyle, how about you start off and tell us the unique aspects to the Psycho Mantis fight?
So Psycho Mantis appears to dodge gunfire, right? You can't shoot him. You can't. Can you punch him, John? I don't remember if you can punch him.
Not while he's psychically connected to you. I mean,
Okay.
I think it's technically possible to shoot and hit him every
just
once in a while.
by
luck,
yeah.
It's almost impossible.
If you spray the FAMAS all the way around, you'll hit him eventually, but you'll run out of ammo. So I think, do you get a red alert during this mission or this boss fight?
You talk about the Hideo alert that turns off?
No. Yeah, so that happens. Yeah, like it just blacks out the screen and the old video. So no input thing for a video input came on. That's cute, except it says Hideo instead of video, which freaked me out for sure growing up. Like, oh, is the game done? What happened? But it says Hideo. Like, what's going on? But I'm just asking, like, because you can't hit him if the codec forces you to take the call in that mission or in that boss fight.
Well, if you don't figure it out quickly enough, they will eventually call you and clue you in, or you can keep calling and they will.
Right. I was going to say, you've been trained in this game, if you're stuck on something, to keep calling the characters. Colonel, what's going on here? Well, it appears that he's cyclically linked to you, Snake. So I have no idea how to stop that. And then, who's doctor lady? I can't remember her name.
Naomi.
And Naomi goes, Snake, try this. Apparently you could like put your body in a salt bath to prevent that from happening, but you don't have access to a salt bath. So good luck. And then you keep calling and Colonel is like, I know what to do, Snake. Are you plugged into port 1? Try putting it in port 2. He won't be able to read your mind that way. And then you take the controller out of the port 1 and put it in port 2. And now you can shoot decoy or Psycho Mantis. I keep thinking octopus.
For the PC game, there's no. At least I had to switch to the keyboard,
Yes.
which was brutal. That was
So
terrible.
fortunately for me, I had practiced a little bit with the keyboard, and I went, I don't want to play with keyboard, so I plugged in my gamepad. So I already knew the buttons and everything. I was like, I'm just going to punch him with the keyboard repeatedly, and that's how I beat him.
So with the Psycho Mantis thing, in the original version, you could either switch controllers, or if you didn't get a clue long enough, there are two statues to his left and right that have tape over their face. If you break both those statues, which he can actually break by you dodging his attack and hitting him, that will also disconnect his psychic trance to you, because I guess they're supposed to be like his face, like that's why he's covering it, like they're busts of his head.
Oh yeah, there's cloths over them, aren't they?
Yeah, there's it looks like tape or something, like black tape, like what run around them. In the Twin Snakes version, you also have to switch controllers, except for that one, he starts reconnecting, and you have to do it again. So he'll switch, and then he'll
Because you
figure
have several
out.
ports.
Yeah, so he might switch it to 3 and then 4.
That's really
if you have to
funny.
keep going back and forth. And then yes, if you have the PC port, you have to do the keyboard. And they even like mess up the audio, because the audio where it says like put it in the second controller slot, it dubs it over with the keyboard, or it like just writes keyboard, but the audio is not matching.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
What an amazing boss fight. And I can't imagine like playing this for the first time and really experiencing that day and date in the late 1990s. You just don't come across stuff like that anymore.
Yeah.
No, it was a watershed game. How many AAA titles have stealth sections for no reason now?
Sure.
Yeah, and they are not pleasant stealth missions either.
Right, they're bare bones and silly.
And the problem with those is that they're like instant death, essentially. And a lot of those with the Spider-Man games, that was one of my big problems. Like the Miles Morales sections and the Mary Jane sections. Yeah, those are terrible. But after we defeat Psycho Mantis, we get some exposition, some more dialogue about who he was and why. But it's whatever. I didn't really care so much about killing him.
You're murdering people. That's the theme of the game.
Yeah, but there were some characters that I actually cared about, and I want to talk about them a little bit later, because we're about to meet one. And as we traverse through the cave, we learn a little bit more about Snake. Like I was talking about, he used to mush dogs in the Alaskan wilderness. I wish that I had watched that entirety of the intro, because apparently there's a lot that I missed. But at this point, Meryl gets sniped, and we have to backtrack and get a sniper rifle of our own, because if we try to go after her, we're going to get shot by Sniper Wolf.
Yeah, the classic move where if you go, you're in a kind of a, what would you call that? A trench? Not a trench. Well, a trench, I guess. And if you move up into the trench too far, you get instantly hit by Sniper Wolf. And then she taunts you like, "Hello, Snake." These kinds of things.
Backtracking, you get your sniper rifle and you come all the way forward. And I didn't know this until afterwards, because I looked it up. But you're supposed to take the diazepam to prevent Snake from shaking.
Mm-hmm. If you talk to I'm missing out on the character's name. Natasha. If you're holding the PSG one and call Natasha, she's like, "Oh, maybe you should take something if you're swaying too much."
Natasha Romanenko. Yep.
And that's probably why this game took me so long to beat, because stuff like this, I didn't take the diazepam, so when you try to get your reticle on her, it will sometimes just start swaying to the left or right. So it's pretty difficult to get a bead on her, because and once she shoots you and you get hit, your entire orientation gets shifted dramatically. So if you were facing straight, you'll be almost at a,
you get spun around.
Yeah, if you think of it as a clock, you're facing 12 o'clock, you get spun around to the 9 o'clock orientation, and you have to get, you deselect the rifle and then go back to it, and then just hope that she hasn't moved and is already ready to shoot you again.
This is also kind of teaching you for the final boss in the game what to do. Although that one is easy easier, as you said, because it doesn't radically switch if you get hit, and then you have to re-equip stuff.
Yeah, that was definitely a pain. But once you do defeat her, you're prompted to save. At least I was on the the PC version. And then you have a quick cutscene to discover that you didn't actually kill Sniper Wolf. Instead, you're about to be captured and brought to an interrogation room. And Revolver Ocelot is there to give some more exposition and dialogue, but not before threatening you not to use an auto-fire controller. So my understanding
He does do that, yeah.
is that if you use one,
It doesn't
with
matter.
auto-fire, it doesn't matter?
He's lying.
Yeah,
Oh,
I've
man.
had an auto fire control. I've never seen it actually say anything to me.
So, okay, so you guys got through it without giving up?
Oh yeah.
Okay, well,
I did not use an auto fire.
Well, I suck. I made it through the first round of interrogation, and on the second the second pass, when you meet that character, what's his name? Johnny
Sasaki.
Sasaki. So he will eventually drag you back to get tortured again. And that second round of torture, I made it almost all the way through, but after multiple tries, I finally gave up and immediately just gave up and just submitted to the torture.
Oh. Let Meryl die.
You let Meryl die.
I felt bad. I mean, I didn't want to. But what choice did I have? Like, I tried several times. I probably spent a legitimate 30 minutes on that.
I get you. Okay. It took me one try, I think. I've practiced my button mashing ability.
Yeah, I have a technique I use where I use
two fingers.
No, I use the top of my fingernail and I slide it along the top of the button.
Oh, I've seen people do that before. Yeah.
What? Whoa, go on. Like, what is this technique?
If you put your fingernail along the top of the button and then slide it left and right so that it just slides off the button and then slides back onto it, you'll hit the button as you go on and off of it.
That always felt weird to me.
Yeah.
That always felt weird to me growing up. So I just tap with two fingers as close as I can to each other. Just.
And I mentioned earlier, despite Otacon being one of my favorite characters in the franchise, I had already completely forgot about him. I completely forgot about this dude. I forgot that we had to like call him up and ask for help.
Oh yeah, call your buddies. They're there. They're your allies. What does Mei Ling say? Like, Snake, call us. We're your allies. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Was Mei Ling maybe she was redubbed in some of those other versions? Because like
Twin Snakes.
Is that actually an Asian actress?
Oh, I have no idea. She's just speaking with the Chinese accent. Yeah, whoever it is.
If I had to guess, it's one lady.
I don't know who it is.
Jennifer Hale. She does a lot of voice acting.
Jennifer Hale has done a ton of work.
She does. She does Naomi. I know for sure.
Oh so, yeah. You're right.
After we get out, we have to do a ton of backtracking through the compound, and this feels like the longest segment.
Can I talk about one thing?
Go for it, man.
When you backtracked, what did you do? This is something I never knew about until way after I had finished playing Metal Gear when I was like, a kid.
What do you mean? What did I do?
So you walked all the way?
Oh yeah, you're talking about.
Yeah. What else?
Why can't you? Why are the boxes labeled certain things? Why are there trucks around? You can hop in the truck with a cardboard box, and the truck brings you to the corresponding screen, which is like 15 screens away sometimes.
And that's why you have 3 different boxes?
Yeah, that's why you have 3 different boxes.
Oh my
God. 3 trucks. 3 boxes.
I didn't know that growing up either. And I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. So I used it for the first time this time and went, God, that shaved like 45 minutes off the game.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of those boxes, I forgot a segment earlier. And if you guys want to hit this up, when it talks about, or have we gotten there yet? Or maybe we were talking about this off air, so maybe I'm in a different spot. But the caves with the wolves?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, sure. That's another trick. Yep. You want to talk about that one, John?
Yeah, no, if you when you're at the cave area and you're next to Meryl, if you knock her out with a combo or you toss her on the floor and then immediately hop in a box, the dogs will actually pee on the box, which has 2 things. 1, it's just funny, but 2, it makes it so that when you're wearing the box, the dogs will no longer attack you because they smell their scent on you and just treat you as one of their own.
instead
That
of
is
little
hilarious.
alert exclamation points, they have the hearts now.
Yeah.
And they go, ooh.
That was something I read about after my playthrough, which would have massively helped. But I was on the struggle bus the entire time in this game because I wanted to play through legitimately. I did everything I could, but I was just getting tanked, man. Like I was getting spotted constantly, but and apparently I could have saved myself a lot of trouble by getting in the damn trucks.
Sure.
Maybe when it comes back out for PlayStation 5, I might try it again, but we eventually make our way. Go for it.
Are they putting it out for PS5?
They are.
Ooh.
Real quick side note, and we might talk about. Actually, let's just save that for the end, okay? So somebody make a mental note to talk about the new games that are coming out. So we eventually make our way back to the showdown with Sniper Wolf, and we have a flashback of Meryl getting shot, and all this felt very kind of ham-fisted for me. Why would Snake, a legendary soldier and assassin, suddenly have all these romantic feelings towards this woman? It felt like a lot of plot, contrivances,
No, for sure.
Sure.
Yep, absolutely.
My only justification for that is your level of the amount of time you talk to her and spend with her is based on how you play the game. Because if you play the game quickly enough, you have like 2 conversations with her
Yeah.
and then meet her. But if you're playing and you're taking a long time, you may
like
call her
me.
multiple times and then hypothetically develop a bond. But I agree, like the speed at which your relationship becomes like, you're in love with her is
Yeah, I just thought it was kind of ridiculous. But eventually we get back to the point where we were captured, and we have to make our entire way up through the communications tower. And what a pain in the ass this was.
I love it.
No, it's awful. After what feels like forever, we make our way to the top, and after a quick cutscene, we have the worst section in the game. The repel.
Behind D.
But first we have to repel.
Oh, gotcha.
That is okay. Again, this is another section that took me
One try, playa. One try this time.
This
so easy
time.
if you jump. If you just jump, it's easy.
Yeah, just keep mashing square. You'll be fine.
Well, I was not fine because I kept hitting the steam, or I kept getting shot, and then I tried to go for the ration that's there because you can't use the ration.
Don't go for rations. You got to go straight down, homie.
Well,
Yeah.
this is my first legitimate playthrough, and
No, I'm 100%. I died a bunch of times at that play too.
Yeah, the easiest way is just to jump and go at diagonals, and it takes 10 to 15 jumps and you're down.
Yeah, I don't think it's that many. And then if Snake is in the air, he can swing left and right, so you can kind of plan it out as you go down.
well, eventually,
I guess it's
I
like
discovered
Shinobi
that.
3's episode, or the first game, or the first screen of that game. I could beat it without getting hit and just hit all of the enemies because I've played it 200 times. You know what I mean?
Here's a question for your younger selves. When you were playing this, did you have the PlayStation controllers that had the oh my god,
The analog sticks.
the analog sticks, or
Yeah, the
were you
DualShock?
only using the directional buttons?
No, I used the directional buttons, but I had the sticks though.
The very first PlayStation controllers that came out didn't have the analog sticks, and it was all just directional buttons for that.
Correct.
And that's how I played the game.
Wait. There were PlayStation 1 controllers that had analog sticks?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
DualShock
No,
came
yeah.
out. Yep.
Released them later on. Yeah.
I didn't get that until PlayStation 2.
Yeah, that one
Yeah.
became standard. Yep.
It was later in its cycle. Yeah, sure.
There were a lot of games that I preferred to have the first generation, with the ones without the analog sticks, just because they didn't require it for the most part. But
Tony Hawk.
this game really, 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 you need it. Okay, and that's part of the frustration maybe that I was having. But we get through the repelling section, and it's so frustrating. But we have to kill some guards here after we finally get down.
Yeah, it's the first reason you actually use the sniper rifle, not against Sniper Wolf. It's like a huge glacial dam that you have to cross, right? And there's guys posted up on sentry towers. So you can sneak around them, or you can use the rifle just to shoot them. This time I definitely just shot them because I didn't want to go, oh, okay, how do I do this again? You know what I mean? I could just shoot them, and that's easy.
I thought that I was being blasted by the Hind D at that point. I wasn't really sure what was going on.
Okay, I don't remember
So-
that.
He's right.
Well-
It's the three soldiers that are on the end of the corridor.
Yeah.
They're shooting you.
Because there's a door that you can't get in, and it just
Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
there's a door and it just makes like the opening sound, but it won't open.
It's because it's the lock is broken or something. They say.
Yeah,
They say
it's like frozen.
Oh, you're
or-
talking about the top of the tower?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. My bad.
Yeah, and after we kill those guards, we have, I've mentioned it a few times, but the most absolutely painful cutscene in the game with Otacon, where he asks whether or not a soldier can fall in love, and if love can blossom on the battlefield. And this was
It
so
can.
heavy-handed.
Sure, yeah.
It was. It wasn't good. It was not well done.
Hideo
I mean,
Kojima
a lot of this.
It's about 95% of the time. And then there's 5% of the game that's always just, all right, you're going a little too much. You're doing too much,
Yeah.
buddy.
Chris, Cory, guys, I've been talking a ton here, and you guys
Listen,
have to give me
I'm
something.
letting the experts go, man. I'm just
Yeah,
having a good
exactly.
time.
Oh yeah, I'm loving this, but I feel
My-
like I'm shutting you guys down here.
No,
No,
my
like
extent
you're
of the playthrough
directing and I'm
ended a
making
long time ago.
sarcastic remarks, and it's good.
Yeah, Cory stopped at the DARPA chief?
Yeah, because I watched you play it for like 9
Okay.
hours. I didn't
Uh,
want to do it again.
There you go. Okay.
Well, after this conversation with Otacon, we make our way to the rooftop and we confront Liquid in the Hind. And this was probably the easiest
Amazing.
for me, the easiest boss fight in the game, because it's just all about patience.
Yeah, I remember being very frustrated about this one as a little kid because, like you said, I was probably playing really aggressive.
This was one segment that I had, John, I remember watching you play this when we were stationed together in Louisiana. And I remember distinctly watching you play through the section. So I kind of already knew what to do. But you did it much cleaner, because it took me quite a while to do it regardless, because I was still kind of just like poking my head out, shooting him, and then immediately running back for cover each and every time.
You know, it's funny. I wanted to note, replaying this game, the one big thing I realized was like, man, I am so much worse at this because I played that game so many times that like back then I could run through every boss easily one first time. Most times no hits. Like I mean, Revolver Ocelot never would hit me. Cyborg Ninja never would hit me. You know what I mean? These certain fights were just cake. And man, I'll tell you what, I died like 10, 15 times with some of these bosses, and I was like, my goodness, like I'm just, so out of touch with it, or just, my older gaming skills aren't, what they used to be,
Well, it's probably been a while since you played this game. I would
Sure.
not be surprised to hear it's been several years for both of you.
Yeah, I remember the difficult thing is juggling with the shoulder button and then selecting a thing, and then also while you're selecting, aiming where you want to shoot with like the stinger. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
That was
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, I remember how to do that. But it's like it's 3 complex motions you have to do, and I was like, God, I haven't done this because who does that anymore? You have to select the weapon through a menu while looking, and then it aims where you're pointing. Like this is too many things to remember.
And then another thing was so just in Metal Gear 2, when you use the Stinger missile, there's a kind of a gameplay element that you can use where you can point the Stinger, lock on, and for
And then move
about a
away.
second or two, they stays locked on. And you can use this to kind of whip around obstacles by like locking onto the helicopter, then whipping to the right. The missile will launch around the obstacles. And because I'm so used to that, and you can't do it in Metal Gear 1, I kept kind of getting into the habit of wanting to do it and messing it up.
And then just missing. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Now, as far as plot goes, this is the big reveal where he's like, "You're ready,
Oh
brother."
yeah, we missed all that. No.
No,
Did
that's
we do
not
that
what
yet?
happened.
That's later.
not what
Yeah,
happened.
that's later
Isn't
in the
this
story.
the
Much
ID
later.
fight?
No,
Nope.
that's later in the story.
He does call him brother a lot, but
He's
I don't
been
know.
calling him brother the whole time, Sean.
But I don't think it's completely revealed
No.
exactly like how they're related.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, I'm just
Well,
gonna.
he asks him. Yeah, he's like, "Why are you calling me brother?" And then he's like, "Ask the father that you killed," doesn't he? Like, isn't that the whole spiel
Yeah,
for this
I'm
bit?
pretty sure you're right.
Yeah, that might be it. But I don't know if they even
I
explicitly.
mean, like they
spell
don't
out,
explicitly say.
Well, the
but, like,
point of
they're
this
teasing
part
it
is that
during this fight, yeah,
Snake
because
doesn't even know for sure at this
because
point.
earlier on in the Psycho Mantis fight, Psycho Mantis is like, "Yeah, I killed my dad, and hey, we're the same guy, buddy." Like,
Also, when Meryl is sticking you up, doesn't she like confuse you for a second?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there you go. There's the first hint.
yes, because she thinks that you're liquid.
Why does
All
everyone
right.
think I'm liquid?
And
Metal Gear.
you know, liquid, solid. Okay, moving on. So this is
Cobra
the
Kai.
part of the game that I feel like they started to pad things out a little bit. The repeated usage of stairwells with the pointless gun turrets that keep increasing in number.
Yeah,
Well-
that's really fun for sure.
Fun.
I know. I'm kidding. It's just throw a chaff grenade, wait for the chaff grenade to blow up, wait, go down, throw a chaff grenade, wait for the chaff grenade to blow up. It does. It's tedious. You're right. What's
I felt
that?
like it just slowed down the pace significantly.
You could also stinger them.
Oh yeah.
Maybe the whole point of slowing things down is because we just had the Hind fight and we almost immediately move into another boss fight after we leave the tower and enter the snowfield and right into our second encounter with Sniper Wolf.
Sure. If
Yeah,
you,
I
I
think
mean,
they
if
did
you're
work
if you're
pretty
playing
basic.
without any padded things, the boss fights actually come pretty close.
And that, after you guys had mentioned that there's like 3 hours of cutscenes and 6 hours of codec dialogue, like I'm not surprised that they are so few, so quick between the two, because the game is basically just like Metal Gear boss rush.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of what it felt like at a lot of times.
Well, there's parts where you're solving puzzles and all of this kind of thing, where, like you said,
Staring at butts.
sneaking around people, hiding under tanks, calling your friends when you're stuck, these kind of things, like does pad the game out. But growing up, it was really awesome not to talk to like a character in a game that tells you what to do instead of like calling or looking something up online.
That's
that was
a really
awesome.
good point. With this next section, I have a question for you guys, because previous to this, Otacon gives us a handkerchief, I believe, that belonged to Sniper Wolf.
This is
Yeah, you
also
can
something you can carry with the wolves.
Is there? Okay, so is there any other significance to that thing?
just that the wolves won't attack you?
That's it?
Yep.
Yep.
As far as I know.
I was expecting that was going to be like involved somehow, because isn't there, and I'm probably thinking about Metal Gear Solid 3, and I don't know the franchise nearly as well as you guys do, that is it the end, the sniper in that game?
Correct.
And there's something with like the wind, that like the direction of the wind like will affect whether or not he can smell you, I think.
That is in Metal Gear Solid 4 when you
4.
fight Crying Wolf.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So I had this vague memories about it because I watched you play that game quite a bit too while we were stationed there. So I was expecting that the handkerchief was going to be somehow used in this boss fight, but it wasn't.
No.
And instead, it's basically the exact same fight as before. And instead of her running from pillar to pillar, she's just running from tree to tree.
And you have Nikita missiles that you could just shoot at her now. It's
Or
really
stingers.
easy. Or stingers
What?
to work too, yeah.
Yeah.
She's
the
super
stingers-
easy.
What?
The
Oh
stingers
my
will lock
God.
onto her.
I was using the sniper rifle again, but this time I knew to use the diazepam.
Oh,
So
okay.
it was quite a bit easier, but I didn't know I could just shoot missiles at her.
You can shoot missiles at her, dog.
Man,
Guys, I gotta say, my favorite part about this episode so far is Sean learning like how much harder he
Yeah.
made it on himself.
guys, I did not need to play for literally over a day's worth of time.
It's so fun. You learn the game, though.
Well, I feel like I could not rush through it. Like, it's not going to be a speed run, but I could probably get through in probably a third of that time.
Yeah, most likely, yeah.
But after we beat her, we have another cutscene, and like I said earlier, I didn't really care when Psycho Mantis was killed and his like dialogue and exposition. I didn't care, but I felt that Sniper Wolf's was a lot more genuine and authentic. You know, because it's just they were real world troubles. Like, she grew up in a war torn society, and
Yeah,
she
she was Serb, right?
occurred.
Oh, a Kurd. That's right. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, she was a Kurd, and you know, this is real world stuff. Like, they've been subjected people, and so I actually felt a lot more emotion for this until Otacon comes up, and it's like, oh, I'm in love with her, and don't do this. It's like he's acting like he actually had something with this woman. Like, is it?
He's known her for 2 days at this point.
Yeah, he acts like they've been together for
Also,
years.
she's the one who's kidnapped him and forced him to work. You know, so he's got like Stockholm syndrome for this lady, I think.
Totally. I mean,
I
Otacon's
hadn't
a
thought
weird
of that.
guy anyway. In part 2, some of the stuff that they talk about in 2 with him is crazy. He's weird.
One really good touch here is that I like the howl of the wolves or the dogs, whatever they are, that's kind of mixed in with the noise of the wind. I thought this was just an excellent touch that really kind of like sent her off as a boss, as an excellent boss.
Yeah.
That for you guys, you probably just missiles her to death and that was the end of it. But for me,
Yeah.
you know, I'm here like crawling around and getting shot and shooting back, and it was actually
Charlie's in the bushes.
a really it was actually a really intense fight for me.
No, I think I said before, this has an incredibly banging soundtrack, and it just hit after hit. And this is, like you said, it is one of them where they mix the sound and the wolves, and the wolves are like howling because they know that she's dead. there's a sense of that her and Raven are more in tune with nature, and they're more tragic characters than the more artificial characters. We could talk about them in a second.
Yeah, for sure. And we're getting there because our very next boss is, of course, Vulcan Raven. But we have more padding, which frustrates the hell out of me because now we have some more elevator scenes where they slowly come up, we get on them, and then they slowly move down.
Yeah, you got to listen to the story at that point, man.
I guess, but this is also the section where we have some very long codex from the Master. And we haven't even mentioned him at all. And if you guys want to kind of explain who he is, you guys would do a much better job than I would.
Sure. I mean, do you want to take over, or do you want me to?
No, you're good, because I was going to start by saying some stupid from, sorry for bleep that out, from like 1971 about him.
Sure. Well, yeah. Later on, you find out Kazuhira Miller. He's connected to in the past games, but essentially,
Yeah.
He's like a mentor to Solid Snake that he's known for many years. And early on, his only purpose is to give you useless information about survival that doesn't really apply in the game for the most part. Like he'll be like, if you're hungry, you could eat the moss off of this tree, or like all this stuff that like you can't really do in the game.
Does it ever come back as like an Easter egg from another game?
Yes, yeah. He's a significant part of Big Boss's story moving forward.
I'll mention this at the end and just kind of remind me if I don't bring it up, but Big Boss kind of gets retconned throughout the series, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, there's so many retcons.
Yeah, a lot of retcons.
Continuing on with this game, after we finish this, well, actually, let me back up. During this elevator sequence, we get a long codec from the Master, and we discover that Naomi might be a double agent. Of course, there's more storyline to all that, but as we continue down, we finally get it. There's an abundance of ravens, which keys you in that you're going to have another boss fight with Vulcan Raven. But this time, he's not in a tank.
Yeah, he just wears a 1,000-pound gun on his back and manages to sprint like 25 miles per hour when he's really, really mad at you.
And here, guys, another silly, useless fact. They're not ravens, they're crows.
They
even say it in one of the cutscenes that like they correct him and tell him that it's a crow. And if you do that, Snake will stop referring to them as ravens. He'll refer to them only as crows.
Okay, that's my bad then, because I must have misheard that because I thought it was the other way around. I thought that people
you're
were
right.
calling them crows when in fact they're ravens.
Oh, is it? Maybe it is. I'm pretty sure it's the other way, but it could be right. I thought he was calling them ravens, but they're crows. But you're probably right.
It's one of those because I did key into that. But after his defeat, we learn of another member of Foxhound, and that's Decoy Octopus. But this is the section where I was kind of getting crunched for time, so my notes are basically non-existent after this part. So this is where I'm going to have to rely on you guys. And Chris, Cory, I feel like I've been talking too much, and I feel terrible about it.
Listen,
So,
I'm chiming in when I have things to do.
Exactly.
So I need you guys to kind of like finish the fight here. After Vulcan Raven is defeated and he is no more, I don't really have any more notes until the very end, and that's where I was like, oh crap, I've forgotten. That's the Metal Gear Rex fight itself. But kind of talk about what happens storyline-wise in between here.
Perhaps the biggest plot point at the end that's kind of like the, oh my god, they got me, is the fact that you find out that Metal Gear is supposed to be activated by one of two methods. Either Kenneth Baker and the DARPA chief have to both input a code, or there's a card called the PAL card that there are supposed to be 3 of them that have to be input. The idea is if you do the codes, it'll activate. If you put in the cards, it'll deactivate, and vice versa. So you find out that they've actually been playing you, and they were not able to get the codes for Metal Gear because they accidentally killed the DARPA chief, which is why they sent in Decoy Octopus to trick you. So the whole...
Oh, yeah, you find the DARPA chief's corpse in the cell that you're in.
Yeah. The DARPA
It-
chief was actually Decoy Octopus trying to
Correct.
get information from you. So they have been stringing you along to get you to figure out how to activate it because they don't have the passcodes. So when you believe, and they've been like knowing that you're listening in on them, that you are deactivating Metal Gear, you are actually activating it for them.
Correct. And the PAL key, you only have one card. And Master Miller basically says, well, does Master Miller know? Oh, he does not know that it's actually 3 cards. He just knows that you have the card. And who gives you that information that it, based on the temperature of the card, it literally changes its, was it Otacon?
Otacon hacks Kenneth Baker's files.
There you go. So now you have to bring the PAL card. Well, you scan it and it goes, PAL card, well, unactivated. Beep, beep. You always have to dodge a stupid camera in that area, too.
The most convoluted pain in the ass thing.
Well, no, it's not that convoluted. Just go to the cold area, lay down.
Yeah, just go over there, run around for a little bit, wait around,
and then
you gotta go all the way back and turn it in, and then you gotta go in the hot area.
The trick is to go prone and spin Snake in a helicopter like that.
Yeah, I know. I watched
for 30 seconds.
You know what else?
And then you go, okay, it's cold now, and then go do it again.
I watched him get killed by turrets like 47 times.
Yeah, I know. It was really annoying. It
in.
wasn't 47 times.
It was
twice, probably twice.
No, it was more than that.
Maybe 3 times.
We're half in the bag at this point.
No, I was so annoyed.
9 hours in.
Like, okay, I'm 9 hours in. But yes, eventually you scan PAL card 3, and then Metal Gear activated, and then the robot it's in a scaffolding system, right? And now the scaffold disengages, and all the horrible stuff starts happening. And Master Miller calls you, and what does he say, John?
He reveals that this whole time he has been Liquid Snake.
I love the voice acting in this part because he suddenly has a little bit of an English tilt to his accent. And I remember being like 8 or 12, whatever, 10 years old going, he sounds like Liquid now. What's going on? And of course he has this villainous reveal.
And this is also kind of what I mentioned earlier, where Liquid kind of just whines about Solid being the chosen one, like
the favorite.
The favorite. He's got all the perfect genes. And if you've ever seen the film
Twins,
yeah,
I always thought that
with Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger, that's exactly what I thought of when giving all this dialogue. I was like, well, Liquid, you're not that bad off. Like, you look identical to him. You're ripped.
You're yoked, man.
Yeah, like, how bad is your life? Like, I mean, yeah, you guys are raised to be murderous psychopaths, but is it? I mean,
Jason Alexander as Liquid Snake.
Oh, that would be a fun
like
one.
this little balding version of the Solid Snake.
There's just so much going on here at the very end of the game that it's kind of hard to wrap your head around everything that had previously happened. But it's just so amazing. So keep going, guys. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Everything blows up now.
Yeah, essentially at this point, after he reveals himself, they try to lock you in the gas room. You know, Otacon hacks you out. You confront Liquid and you fight Metal Gear, but not before being interrupted by Cyborg Ninja. Go ahead and take over, sir.
So Cyborg Ninja is actually Frank Yeager, Naomi's lost stepbrother.
Not even real brother, but yeah.
Yeah, adopted brother, found brother. And Snake previously also killed him in the original Metal Gear. Is that correct? I'm pretty sure that's correct, right? Snake does kill him.
Metal Gear 2. So
okay,
Metal Gear 1, he's a hostage. Metal Gear 2, he's a bad guy. You fight him on a minefield and kill him. And in the plot line, the idea is that they took his body and kept it alive through the Cyborg Ninja experiment.
They put his husk of a body into the Cyborg Ninja, and now he's forced, just like Snake, just like an artificial means of war, to keep fighting forever. But he's found purpose through saving Naomi, all these sorts of things. And he does disable the Metal Gear. He hits the radio node thing. And and then he gets crushed by the nose of Metal Gear. Liquid shoves his body and basically just really jacks him up. And then he basically goes, Snake, kill me. And what happens then?
Let's see. Solid Snake pulls out the rocket launcher, but cannot shoot him because he knows that he knows that if he kills Liquid, it'll kill Ocelot as well. And
Correct.
so he refuses to do it, and then Liquid kills him and steps on his body.
Once again, it's gruesome, horrifying gore. I remember going, wow, that was really bloody growing up.
I gotta say, for all the things bad I say about Twin Snakes, the one thing I love about Twin Snakes better than Metal Gear Solid is this part of the game for two reasons. I don't like the fact that they make Solid Snake into a superhero, backflip off grenades, and do all this crazy stuff. But when they do it with Cyborg Ninja, I'm like, okay, he's supposed to be amazing. So in the Twin Snakes version, he's deflecting bullets, he's dodging left and right, he's jumping off the wall. It's amazing. And then when Liquid finally kills him, they do it in a far more brutal way. He steps on him, and then he like drags his feet on him like he's grinding his feet into a fly.
Like a dog?
That's like smears him on the ground. And it's just like, that was such a better, more violent death in that version.
And then you fight Metal Gear. You shoot Liquid now in the face with the Stinger missile several times, which has always made me laugh. Like, he's just sitting there, and I'm hitting him in the face with the missile. He's not dying at all.
Does anybody appreciate that Otacon was nice enough to program the Metal Gear with a roar button?
Oh, absolutely.
It roars like a dinosaur.
I thought that this fight was one of the easier boss fights for me because it tells you what to do and how to do it. You know, once you kind of figure out the pattern, it's not very complex at all.
Yeah, it's just about the pattern because it's a distance thing. You know, if you're too far, he shoots rockets at you. If you're too close, he hits you with that little gun
laser
between
beam.
his legs. And
Yeah.
then if not, he just kind of volleys the machine gun in between. So it's a lot of like moving in mid-distance, shooting, moving in forward to avoid the rockets, moving out back to avoid the laser, and kind of juggling that. But yeah, it's not that hard once you get the pattern.
All right, guys, how about you go ahead and wrap up the game for us so that we can move on to our last segment?
Take it away, man.
Okay, so after Metal Gear is destroyed, we have to fight Liquid bare-chested on top of it, don't we?
Yes.
We gotta just did a bare-chested man fight. And I learned in this one that you can just flip him. I never attempted that strategy where you just run by him, flip him, and then punch him, and you repeat that like 8 times and he's dead. I never had that happen before.
Oh, I've never done it that way either, because I didn't know that it did enough damage to kill him that fast.
Yeah, it does kill him pretty well. Maybe not 8 times, maybe 20 times, but okay. You can also do the where he's stunned and then you time it right?
Yeah, I actually was doing that. So normally you can only do a very basic 3-piece combo, punch, punch, kick. But if you shorten your interval on your punches, you can essentially volley him with almost an unlimited amount of punches. So instead of doing punch, punch, kick,
he has a stun animation.
Punch, punch. Yeah, and you can pretty much keep him in that for almost indefinitely.
I tried it 3 times and went, I'm not going to even try it again. So I did the whole flippy dippy thing.
You can just stun lock him.
Yeah.
Yep, pretty much.
And then does Metal Gear? No, you have to escape because there's a bomb going. Oh, Liquid is tied to a what do you call it? Dead man's trigger? Is that what's going on then?
There's a 2 minutes and 30-second timer. Yeah, I think he might have a dead man's trigger. But the whole big thing here is this is where the game diverges into 2 plot points. There's essentially 2 endings.
Oh,
if you survive the torture, then Meryl will live. You will escape with Meryl. Or if you let Meryl die, she will be dead when you come to her body, and instead you'll escape with Otacon.
Yeah, I got the Otacon ending.
I got that Otacon.
Yeah, I could not get past the torture scene.
Which turns it from romantic to like a bromance.
Yeah. Well, I guess we could fight together. What's your name? David. Okay.
That's really it. I mean, there's a little bit more story beats, but I think that
one more thing is that just in case you're curious about the sequels, Snake has been secretly infected with fox dye. There's also a whole bunch of cloning that we're going to get over. Okay. Anyway, sorry about that.
Well, we missed the chase scene when you
Oh
get
yeah, the
off of
chase scene
Metal
happens.
Gear,
Yeah.
you hop on a Jeep and Liquid is still alive, and you guys have a high-speed chase through some tunnels, shooting him on a turret until you eventually crash, and then yes, Liquid Snake dies just like the DARPA chief, or rather, Decoy Octopus, just like Kenneth Baker from the same heart attack, which is fox dye. Which I don't think we've really explained what fox dye
No.
is.
Well, I think we've skipped over a lot of the themes of cloning and
Sure.
genetics and stuff like that.
Do you want me to explain what the fox dye virus is?
Basically, the fox dye virus is attuned to people's genetic patterns. It's a weapon that you send someone in to a situation with, and the goal is to have them make contact with these specific people, and the virus will infect them, and because they have a specific genetic sequence, it'll kill those specific people. However, turns out that Snake is also infected with the fox dye virus that will kill everyone, all the genome soldiers on the base, all of Foxhound. Basically, he's a nuclear weapon himself. That's why they sent him there.
Well, which is why Decoy, posing as the DARPA chief, has this heart attack or whatever, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So essentially, the thing is, you're sent in there under false pretense. You believe you're going there for what they tell you to be there, but really they infect you with this virus that essentially is an assassin virus, like you said. It has the names of all the people who need to be eliminated. And as long as Solid Snake gets within range of them, it's just like a cold, they should get it. And so it's supposed to kill everybody. It doesn't kill Mantis because he has a gas mask. It doesn't kill Vulcan Raven because he's big and it would take him a long time before it would eventually infect him. It doesn't kill Revolver because we find out he's a double agent, and it doesn't kill Sniper Wolf because the medication she's taking slows down her heart rate. So a lot of the people who would have died eventually, but you end
faster.
Yeah.
Right, you also end up shooting them to death. Use.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean that's one way to take care of it.
Yeah.
So guys, do you think that we're at a point that we could stop here, take another music break, and then come back with our final thoughts?
Let's do it.
Sure.
All right. Everybody out there, this was a tremendously long segment, so thank you for sticking with us. We're going to take one last music break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about our final thoughts about Metal Gear Solid. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that music. So this is our last segment where we're going to talk about our final thoughts, how we felt about the entirety of Metal Gear Solid. Is this a game that we're going to replay again, or maybe just let it just kind of drift away? Cory, what are your thoughts?
Well, I am not great at the game. That being said, this is a really fun title and a fun series overall. Like we said, it's very cinematic. Even the opening of the game really gives me like Hunt for Red October kind of vibes. it's just a very, very fun title, and like the voice acting is great, and there's just a lot of like weird Easter eggs and plot hooks and all kinds of entertaining stuff like that. I would probably not go back to play it just because, like I said, it's not the type of game I excel at, but it's one of those things where every once in a while, like, I certainly would think about it, or like, look up a YouTube and just kind of watch somebody play through it, or just have a good time with it, just because it is something you can really just watch and experience and have a good time with that, like, in that regard. So overall, I think it really does deserve like the ratings that IGN and everybody's giving it as like one of the best PlayStation games, and I think it is just a really good title and a really great series overall. And Hideo's a really weird guy.
Yeah, that goes without saying. But Chris, what are your thoughts?
I really enjoyed it. I never really got into the series. I'd never played this game before. For me, it's just a nice little reminder of how cool PlayStation 1 was. The awkward controls, the very PlayStation 1 graphics. But like I mentioned earlier, I really enjoyed all the humor and personal little touches they put in the game. It is a little, at times, like anime cringy.
It ham-fisted, heavy-handed.
Yes, yeah. But no, it seems like a fantastic game that, I was going to ask, like, what would be the next, if I wanted to get further into the series and play another game, and one thing that was hard about this game, yeah, like you guys mentioned, the only place you could play this game is on GOG, and what would be a more accessible way to get into Metal Gear?
So recently announced. Oh, go ahead, John.
I was going to say, I believe that Metal Gear Solid 2, if you want to play the next one, is playable on Xbox because they released it for Xbox as well. So if you have Xbox, or if you have the thing that allows you to stream the games, it may be on that, the Microsoft game library type thing. It may be on that, the old Metal Gear Solid 2.
Cool.
And if not, recently announced there are going to be re-releases of the first 3 Metal Gear Solid games for the PlayStation 5, and I believe so for some of the other platforms as well, or maybe that's the remake of Metal Gear Solid 3 that's coming out. I believe it's Metal Gear Solid Delta that they're calling it. Okay.
Well, so, this as tied in as with Nintendo as this is getting, I'm surprised it's not coming to the Switch or something.
It could run it.
On the Switch. Yeah.
I don't think it could run it. I mean, like you had Tears of the Kingdom, which just came out, amazing game, but I don't think that the graphic fidelity is there for something like a Metal Gear title.
Oh, crazy.
But this game, Metal Gear Solid 1, it's a brilliant game, and it really shows that Hideo is a brilliant person. And this game itself, it spawned a successful franchise that solidified him as an amazing designer and director. The game itself really, really needs a one-for-one remake to bring it into the modern era. Twin Snakes was a visual improvement and has some quality of life improvements for sure, but the overtop cartoonish style that they added really detracts from that brilliance that I was talking about. This game is just amazing. And even though I spent 26 hours on it, I would do it again. It was phenomenal. And now that I know a lot more about it from hearing from Kyle and John, when those games inevitably get re-released for the PlayStation 5, I'm buying them and I'm going to run through this game again.
May I add one more thing that I'm thinking about?
Yeah.
Did you watch after the ending credits for the post-credit scene? Because before MCU did it, Metal Gear did it.
Mr. President.
Don't spoil it. I don't want to know. I'm going to do it on my playthrough when I go back through. So, Kyle, let's hear your thoughts.
So this is probably, I think the last time I played it was probably 5 or 6 years ago, in less than legal means. But I went back to play because I was like, oh yeah, that's a fun game. And of course, just played it last week, and it's held up. Still in the top 10. It's still a game, as you can tell, I've paid a lot of attention to and remembered. I'm 35. This game came out almost 30 years ago now, right? So,
it came out in 1998.
It stuck with me.
Yeah, I can see that. And just listening to you two, it's clear that you guys just have a passion for this game.
For sure.
So, John, bring us home.
Bring us home. What can like I said, I'm a huge fan. I love the original Metal Gear. I honestly think, um, outside of graphically, it holds up pretty well. I mean, it is kind of low polygon. The storyline is still surprisingly good. The voice acting, like you said, it's not like some games like Resident Evil that have just really awful voice acting. It's really well, you know, it's just a really good plot line, and I don't know.
You almost became a Jill sandwich.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
was in my head. Get out of my head, because that's exactly the line I was thinking of.
Yeah, it's a solid, no pun intended game.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot more to say about it because we talked about this game for nearly 3 hours now. So I'm just going to go ahead and we're going to bring this show to a close. And I've got to thank you guys so much. Chris and Cory, you guys have been pretty quiet during this segment.
Hey,
and
man,
I
like
apologize.
I said, we got professionals on hand that'll give us a better rundown.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful for you guys to come on. And thank you so much, Chris and Cory, and especially to you, Kyle, and you, John. Your input has really elevated this entire show.
I was looking forward to this since we talked about it. So it's been several months, and I'm glad we finally got around to it.
Yeah, it's been a long time in the making, and it took a lot of coordination to get all this done, but I'm so glad that we did it.
And, viewers at home, this could have been even longer because we had another guy scheduled to join us.
Yeah, that's supposed to be a third additional guest. So, it would have been brutal.
And I assure you,
Cory and I were actually talking.
You guys talked over each other. What did you guys say, Chris?
I was just saying, could you imagine if Cory and I were actually talking this whole time?
I had plenty to contribute. It was mostly sass.
I've got a lot of editing ahead of me. John, what were you saying?
No, and I said, and I assure you that I have been holding my tongue because there's been several times when I just wanted to hop in and add stuff, and I'm like, nope, let's keep it as trim as we can to not go.
So
long.
we talked about like eating food on the battlefield, and I was like, remember in Snake Eater 3 where he cooks the snake on the battlefield? That was pretty cool.
Well, guys, if you want, this is something to think about. We could do another side quest episode where if there's something that you really wanted to discuss further, we can maybe go back and talk about it in a little more detail while we're kind of cutting out a lot of the play-by-play like we did here. But for everyone else at home, thank you so much for listening. This is a very, very long episode. You're going to be looking at about 2 hours, 45 minutes when we're done, maybe even longer, because I hadn't even thought about adding the music in. So thank you so much. You can find us on Twitter, co-host. We're on Spottable. We're on a lot of other platforms now. So go ahead and check us out. Give us a follow. Our next game is going to be Mortal Kombat 2, but we're also going to be doing some talk about Mortal Kombat 1 because both of them have anniversaries going on this year.
Mortal Kombat. And the movie, right? We're going to be mentioning the old movie.
There's no way we can't mention the movie.
You broke my glasses.
Your soul is mine.
So thank you, everyone. We've been Superannuated Starman.
Thanks for coming, guys.
To see